Hello and welcome to our Go Far Fast show, our small business talk show that gets you, our amazing small business community, the answers to the burning questions you have as fast as possible. Another brilliant episode coming up for you today, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as you come through. Let us know what you want to know, and Aaron and I will jump to it. Hi, Aaron. How are you doing?
Brilliant there. Thank you, Burley. Thank you very much. Well, the name of the show is Go Far Fast, and exactly what we have for you today. We have the amazing Joshua Bicknell, who is here to tell us all about Validate, an online platform to help you plan, test, pitch, and any startup or innovation idea. We are ready to interrogate Josh, ask him all about what Validate does, and find out if you can use Validate for anything else. Then we'll pick his brains on benefits of having a co-founder and how to handle pressure from competition in the market. Then, Merle, we're going to move to the most important part of the show, which, if you've already mentioned, is the community questions. And let me tell you, Merle, the community have gone and delivered today. You guys have asked some amazing questions, as always, and we have stories to match the questions as well. No spoilers for this one, but it's definitely something that you do not want to miss. Remember, this show is all about your questions, so make sure you follow Farilio's social channels to get your questions read live on air. Right, Merle, let's fight the fight, leave no small business behind. How does this all work?
Oh, it's fantastic. I think you have stolen everywhere that I wanted to tell the audience, Aaron. But yes, absolutely. We're going to interrogate Joshua Bicknell. I love this tool, guys. This is something that we discovered. We want you all to know about it. Joshua's going to give you all the details. So Aaron and I will ask him a few questions about Validate, as Aaron says, how it works, how he set it up, what he's doing with it, what the future holds. And then we're going to get straight into the really important section, which is what can you do with it and how can it solve your burning questions of today? So I think, drum roll, Aaron, shall we drag Joshua onto the show and start the interrogation?
Brilliant. Joshua, go on then. The stage is all yours. Tell us all about Validate and what it does.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me and interrogating me so early in the morning. I'm looking forward to this. You've covered a lot of it already, but think of Validate as a one-stop shop to imagine, test, create, and pitch any business idea or startup. So we've basically gone out and read all the books, watched all the videos, looked at all the content around, how to run great businesses, how to innovate, and tried to put it into one simple, step-by-step interactive journey to make it as easy for you as possible so that you can focus on the things that really add value and not worry about all the rest.
Yeah, I think it is so powerful, this tool. I really, really like it. And Josh, as you say, you can use it for project planning. You don't just have to be starting up a business to use this tool, but the journey it takes users on to create really something out of the idea that they've got. This is about bringing the dream to life, isn't it? Getting it down in a really easy, quite inspiring way on paper, and then being able to take it further and test it. It's a kind of soup to nuts solution that I really like. I wanted to talk to you, Joshua, about universities, because this is where you guys kind of started out. So working with university business students, entrepreneur students, to bring Validate to life and to really solve quite a big pain point for those students. What was the experience like of working with universities? I know a lot of startups would love to work with universities. How did you find it?
So Validate's actually our second business with my co-founder, Doug, who we'll talk a bit about later. So in our original business, which we're still running, we'd worked with probably thousands of entrepreneurs around the world, delivering entrepreneurship programs from kind of Kenya to Philippines to Chile. And then as a part of that, we were asked by a few universities to come in and run some startup courses for them. So we ran some sessions at places like Birkbeck and LSE. And people really love the content. And so we realized that there's probably a market here. There's probably, a need for students to get access to really good quality entrepreneurship education. And obviously there's only, one of me and one of Doug. So we thought maybe we can put this online and create a solution to that. Universities, I think as a startup, it can be a difficult market to work with. They're all different. They have different priorities. any big institution that you're trying to work with, there's lots of different decision makers.
Yeah.
And so a decision that we took fairly early on was to actually partner with an organization in the UK called SimVenture, to actually distribute our products to universities, because they already had a fantastic network. They were doing something similar. They had all the contacts in the way into these different institutions. So I think for us, that was like a fantastic way to get into the market, and saved us a lot of time and really allowed us to focus on the things that we wanted to do, which was, building Validate and trying to make it as good as possible.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I think the whole idea of moving directly and focusing on universities is really a good stepping stone, wasn't it? I mean, you think about what you're offering, it's going to really relate to the students. It's going to give them, the tools they need to actually start making their university choice, whatever course they've gone for, actually something that's going to be worthwhile to them, and you're going to give them those tools. I think that's brilliant. I think that's a really, really great attribute to it. But just moving away from the university side of things and kind of the tool of it itself, but can you use Validate for any other planning activities too? I'm thinking about, things like business planning projects or testing out a pivot. There have been loads of us transforming and changing our businesses recently. Can Validate help there too?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the thing about the startup process is it's very, very similar to innovating within a business, right? So whether you're starting something from scratch or you've already got something that exists, you're going to have to come up with a new idea. And then there's going to be a lot of ways that you could develop and launch that idea. So you need to think about it and plan those different ways that it could really come to life. And then once you've got those different plans or ideas, then the next step is actually to think, okay, like, what are my biggest assumptions here? Are people really going to want this? Am I targeting the right group? And so for any startup or innovation idea, the next stage is really to get out there and, we call it testing, but really it's getting it in front of customers and learning as quickly and as cheaply as possible whether, what you've got is right. And in most cases, you don't get it right the first time, which is, totally normal, and it's what's expected. And so then you go through that cycle of iterating and developing. And then finally, on Validate, you have a portfolio, which you can see as a pitch or an interactive business plan, which is something to present. And I think, again, it's the same. In a startup, you might be presenting that to get investment, to a bank, to a co-founder, to customers. And I think it's the same in any company. You might be trying to get investment from the board. You could be trying to sell it to your co-founders. Again, it could be to your customers. So you've always got to try and present and win people over to this new idea. So, we haven't created Validate for university students. That was the first group that we went after. But we wanted to try and create a platform that works for really any entrepreneur anywhere in the world, that creates a simple process for them to follow through and to make it, as easy and quick as possible to get to an idea that works and hopefully is successful.
I think that's where the magic of this tool lies as well, doesn't it, Aaron? I mean, if you think about how long it can take to get something from ideation into a plan to then create some kind of roadmap to that plan, so actionable points that you can take. And Josh, I think one of the things you just said there is it's all very well to have a plan, right? But you've got to test it. You've got to know how it's going to behave in the wild. And then you've got to be able to take confidence from what you learn in that sort of test phase, talking to your customers, and then be able to promote that to others, whether that's customers, investors, as you said, maybe it's the people that you want to recruit. It sounds so simple when you look at this in sort of business books, this is the process you go through. There is a formula, but actually there's so much bound up in the thinking of that, the testing of that, the emotion even of that. How do I feel if actually I've put something down and I don't think it's quite right? I think this is what I really love about your tool. It sort of takes a lot of the angst. It takes a lot of the kind of process. People pay thousands of pounds to be supported through this process. And your tool effectively guides people very gently through to an end proposition that they can have real confidence in. I think this is really quite unique. I've not seen anything like it. Certainly, we're starting to use it with people that we support too, because, and obviously being part of the Birkbeck community, I know how well it's valued by them too. It really does take a lot of that early stage angst out of a project or a new business idea and just get you concretely on the ground. So I think it's very, very impressive what you've built. And of course, it's not just what you've built. You do have a co-founder, don't you? We mentioned Doug earlier. How have you found the experience of having a co-founder? Do you think it was essential for you guys to get to market? Has it helped you?
I think often the bit of entrepreneurship that people overlook is kind of the emotional side of it, right? That, you know, you're creating a business, but really that business is you. You know, you're putting your life and your soul into it. And it's very hard when if someone critiques an idea, not to take that personally, because, you know, you've created it. So I can't imagine going on this journey without a co-founder. Having said that, I think, you know, you need to pick the right person. My wife was saying that, you know, probably over the last 8 years, I've seen Doug more than I have seen her, because, you know, you're spending probably 10 hours talking, working together for, you know, 5 days a week. So, yeah, you need to make sure that you have that, you know, that balance there. It doesn't need to be 2, it could be 3 people. But it's not to say, you know, you can't do this by yourself. I just think that it's really important that you have someone in your life that you can like really share this journey with, you know, all the highs and the inevitable lows. And also that, you know, there's so much going on in your mind and your brain, just someone that you can talk things through and get to a point, I think has been incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's really important advice, isn't it? Especially talking about how, you know, you mentioned about the benefits of having that extra co-founder, that extra person who's going to be able to bounce ideas off and, like you said, highs and lows, and be able to go through those bits for you. And I think, you know, putting it out there and explaining how you've benefited from it is going to be really beneficial to people. And I think also with that, doesn't it, and I'm only assuming here, but doesn't it give you kind of a chance that, because there's 2 of you, you've kind of got a chance not just to be 100% focused on the business. And that's what sometimes you can find with new startups, is they're so tunneled at what they're building and everything else. They don't give the chance to look outside of that box and have a chance to look outside of what else is going on. So, you know, from that point of view, from a competition point of view, when you were deciding to build Validate, did you have any, or did you have to worry about competitors? And if you did have any, you know, was it something that you had to kind of make changes over time for, or adapt, or anything like that? You know, give us some insight into competitors and how they fit with you, and how you had to deal with them over time.
I think the thing about competition is, some competition is good because it shows that there's a problem there and that people are trying to solve it. I think, you know, there's some ideas in the world that are so breakthrough that maybe there's no competitors. But I think generally, if there's no one doing this, it's probably something to look, you know, carefully at and think, is there a market for this? I think the second thing is, like, people often think about competition like very narrowly. So you think about just like who else is paying money for this solution, but really you should think about it much broader and think, how are people currently solving this problem? Because that is the competition, right? How do people spend their time and their money right now is what you're trying to shift. So in terms of startup entrepreneurship, I mean, there's loads of competition. You know, we're competing with YouTube and books and blogs and podcasts, and as well as like other technology that you even get into. But I think within that, you also want to try and find a niche. So that very few businesses, as I said, you're doing something totally new. Actually, you're just trying to find a problem and find a piece of it that you think you can do slightly better. And that's what we did. We'll talk a bit more about it, but a large part of Validate is a business model canvas. And there were already people with digital business model canvases, but a lot of them, it was just about like putting Post-its on the screen. It didn't really dive deeper, and we didn't feel that there was anyone helping you with that journey. Similarly, there's you know, platforms to help you maybe do testing, but that wasn't combined. And again, we didn't think it was as simple as it could be. So I think competition is good. But I think every startup or, you know, innovation idea, you should be thinking like, what's the thing that I can do differently, whether it's a massive thing or just a small thing that can add value here and can actually mean that customers pick me over what their existing solutions really are or are at the moment.
Yeah, I love that answer. Competition is good in many ways, as long as you've got something to differentiate yourself. I think that's a point very well made. It always worries me when you hear people come into pitches, for example, and I watch a lot of people pitch these days, and they sort of boldly stride out and say, there is no competition, I'm unique. And it almost invariably undermines their credibility right from the outset. But what Validate has is really differentiated. And I think you're right. There is lots of advice out there about how to business plan and how to do things. But actually, when it comes down to having to do these things, and I know this from personal experience, Aaron, I'm sure you can say the same thing, it's a very different experience. And the practical side of applying the theory is, I think, where we all struggle a bit. So that's where Validate neatly creeps in. Anyway, it is time, Aaron, for the community questions. So thank you, guys. We're going to dive straight in now. And Josh is going to wear a different hat now and become our community agony aunt on some of these amazing questions. Thank you, guys, as always, for the questions you've been sending in. So the first question, Joshua, if you're ready, is how long does it take to plan a business using your tool? I really like this question. I've got some thoughts already, but I find the planning process overwhelming. There's so much stuff I'm not sure about, and I'm not great at putting things in writing. I totally relate to this one. I don't know where to start. This was me.
Yeah. I think the thing about a plan is it's such a big word. And there's very different kinds of plans, right? You can have a plan on a single piece of paper and you can have a 30-page plan. And I think the key in any business idea is that plan needs to be proportionate to like how far along and how developed you really are. And so if you're at an early stage, you've got an idea, your plan shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes, I don't think. And on Validate, you could do that. So we use an amazing tool called the Business Model Canvas, which I think has probably revolutionized startup entrepreneurship, where previously startup programs were teaching how to write a business plan. And the problem is, as soon as you launch, all of that will go out the window because none of it's true. And what the Business Model Canvas did was it put that onto a single piece of paper so you can visualize and quickly plot your idea. So I think at that first stage, on Validate, you can run through an idea, think about your customers, what value you're offering, how you get to market, your operations, your finances. And you can do that in, I think 15, 20 minutes, you can run through it. And that's the first stage. But then it's about going deeper, right? So once you've got that idea, you then need to start talking to people and testing it to develop a more develop plan and think about if this is going to work. That's going to take obviously longer, and it depends on how long it takes you to find something that really, really fits. And then having a final, fully developed plan, might take you much, much longer. And I think the key thing about a business plan is that, and also where Validate comes in, is that it shouldn't just be this document that you create even after you've launched that just sits in a cupboard somewhere and you never look at it. It should be iterative, because every week or month you're learning, you're honing your idea. And so I'd really recommend you then going back into Validate, updating bits of your canvas, updating your tests and your plan, so that it really relates to real life. And that's what we've tried to do here. Rather than this kind of old-fashioned business plan, which is a document, we tried to create something that's like alive and interactive and that you can change and update quickly. And isn't a chore, because I can understand, we've written a few business plans that probably, 5,000-10,000 words long, and we've never looked at again. And I think the key thing is, the more words doesn't mean the more success you're likely to have. And so that's what we've tried to do with Validate as well. Just pick key questions in each blocks of the business model canvas and focus so that you don't write loads of words. You just write the key things, and gets you to think about the key questions that you have in starting your business.
I love that. And I love the fact that what you've effectively done is made the journey of making a business plan actually bearable and actually manageable. And I think that's the first major step, isn't it? Is that whole fear factor of, oh my God, I've got to sit down and write all of this information, and, I've got to sit there and put all this stuff down. But actually making it manageable and making it something that is going to be doable gives confidence to people to actually get down and get those important bits done. And I love the idea of referring back to it on a more regular basis. It's something that we've definitely seen for our clients. It's something that hasn't been done to its best extent sometimes, and you can see that where they've just kind of slightly gone off course, or they've taken the ball, they've off the gas, or whatever has happened to them. But if they were more focused, they would have been able to get over those issues quicker and sooner. So I love that idea. I think that's something that I can definitely see a lot of businesses out there getting benefits from as well. Just referring back to the community questions though, and again, we've got a great question here. It's actually kind of reflects back to what we were talking about before. So one of the members asked, can your tool tell me if you've got competition and what it looks like? I've tried to start 2 businesses before and I thought they hadn't been done before, but both times it turned out they had. And it made me too anxious to go ahead with them. Does Validate give them any kind of incentive or look into anything like that? And can it help them in them sort of situations?
I think going back to the earlier question and answer, the fact that this person, has found some competitors is a good thing. You shouldn't be scared by that. As we said, it shows that there's a demand and a market for this. But it's thinking about, what can they add here? What can they do that's a little bit special, a little bit different to create value for customers? Unfortunately, Validate, it can't tell you magically whether you have competitors, but what it can do is it can take you on a simple journey to help you find the answers to that. So in the testing section, we give you ideas of different ways that you could test. One of which is doing research, and we give you tools for that. Things like looking at Google Trends, so looking at what people are searching for example, to see what's current in the market. Through to doing interviews with customers, which I think would be the most powerful way of really understanding if there's competition. And the best question for that is asking, do people have this problem and how do they currently solve it? Because how they're currently solving it is exactly the competition that you need to try and work against and add more value so that they come to you instead of that. So I think all of the answers to this would always be try and talk to customers, try and figure out who they are, and just have a good conversation with them and listen, understand, do they have this problem? Do they have this frustration? And what are they doing right now? And then think about how you can solve that better. And if you can solve it better, then it doesn't really matter what all the other competitors are doing, because they're going to prefer your product or service and come to you.
Yeah, I think that's great insight. I've been working with a business recently where what they do is they go out and they ask their target customers, what do you not like about our rivals? What do you not like about the competition? What part of the experience isn't working for you? And it's been quite extraordinary, actually, the insights that they've got out of that, because they're not pitching, because they're not saying, buy our, new product that's going to try and change your behavior. They've gone right the way back to, what do you not like? Is there any way that, you would enjoy the experience if it was changed a bit? They've got some really lovely tweaks to, a fairly competitive product market that they've just changed. They're just changing a few things in, and it looks like it's really going to hit demand. So really great advice there. Next question, Josh. You're doing well. Once I've got my plan to start, how do I test it? What's your advice, Josh? How much can Validate actually help with that? So the testing aspects of the tool.
Yeah, I think testing is probably the thing that we've seen entrepreneurs and we probably struggle most with, because the immediate, I think, assumption as an entrepreneur is that I've got this idea, it's great, of course people are going to love it, let's launch. And unfortunately, probably customers don't do exactly what you think they're going to do. So then, you need to come to testing. And again, what we've done in Validate is we've tried to take something that maybe is complicated and just break it into simple step-by-steps. So the first thing is, in any startup or innovation idea, there's a load of assumptions, right? There could be 50 or 100, like who are your customers? What are your channels to get to them? How much should I charge? How should I charge? What are my costs? Who am I going to work with? All of this stuff. And it's overwhelming. But the thing is, out of those maybe 50 or 100 assumptions, there's probably only 2 or 3 that are really, really critical. And generally they revolve around, who are your customers? Do they have this problem? And can you create value for them? And so that's the first step in Validate, is helping you to work out what those critical assumptions are. The next stage is, okay, I've got these assumptions. How do I test it? And what we've tried to do is to create almost 6 buckets of tests that you can select from, and then we give you tools to use in them. And they basically range from the easiest and quickest to do to more advanced and more difficult. So the first one is, you can actually build a homepage on Validate, in a minute. There's some different templates. You throw in some images, you write what your idea is, you have a link, and you send it out to people, and they can comment immediately on it. So that's to really break it down and get you doing it fast. The next thing, I think, is research. So there's lots of powerful tools you can do. You can look at, how are others already solving this? After that, you've got surveys, which is, speaking with customers, but speaking with them, digitally in a sense, or with paper. So asking them different questions. And there's different kinds of surveys that we give examples of, from, discovery surveys to, A/B testing, thinking about which product. Then you've got interviewing, which is obviously speaking with customers. Again, there's different kinds of interviews you can run. You can run focus groups. You can focus on the problem, the solution. After that, we have prototyping. Prototype is kind of a fancy word, but it's basically how can you put something physical in front of your customers? That could be a kind of fully fledged website. It could be a short animated video. It could be a kind of cardboard mock-up of your product. And then the final thing is selling. And selling is obviously, a transaction or some kind of exchange where people are giving you either a commitment of money, or they're actually paying for this. And the thing is, as I said, it's a scale from the easiest and the quickest to selling, which is the hardest. But also at each of those stages, you have different quality of evidence, because it's much easier for someone to say in a survey, I love this, rather than in, someone actually giving you their money. That's the hardest thing. So there's lots of different ways to test, from easy to more difficult, different qualities of evidence along the way. And what we do is, we break that journey down so you can do all of that testing and validate. We give you examples, tips, tools. So it doesn't have to be this really overwhelming thing, but actually you can just focus on the best way of doing it and start really, really quickly. As I said, go in, build a homepage in 2 minutes, send it out, put the link on Facebook, send it to your friends, whatever, and start getting feedback immediately. And you're already on your way.
That's a sensational idea, isn't it? And I'm so just that idea of making it simple at the very beginning, just to get something out there, just to get that initial response, get something that's going to actually validate what your concerns or your issues is going to be, means that then when you start looking at more complicated bits, you can use the stuff you've learned and actually dive into the bits that's going to be important. And I think that's a really innovative way of thinking about it. Again, it's about making it simple, isn't it? It's about making it so it's accessible and giving opportunities for businesses out there to actually understand and figure out what's going on without it being overwhelming. So I think that's a fantastic tool. And, to me, I think that's one of the best parts about it so far. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I know we're running short on time here, so I know we've got hopefully time for a couple more, but definitely this last question I think is going to be really important, because I think, we're talking about the journey now, aren't we? And we've talked about how Validate can really help and bring together those initial ideas and get those ideas off the ground and, drive innovation and get those buckets that we talked about and everything that goes with it. I think that's fantastic. But what about on the flip side of that? What about if they've done all that information or they've done all that prep work and it's just not gone to plan? Probably because it's out of their control. COVID's been a huge factor of that at the moment, hasn't it? Where great ideas, fantastic ideas, have just timing's not been on their side. So, what's your advice when the plan doesn't work? So this question is directly from the community, and it's they've started a business last year. Great timing, obviously, and it's not worked out. Nobody seems to be interested. I don't know what to do and whether or not to give up. Have you got any advice for them at all?
Yeah, so someone described entrepreneurship in a way that I really like. They called it enlightened trial and error, which is basically you're trying stuff, you're learning from it, and you're progressing. And so I think you start with a vision of what you have, and I think you have to be true to that vision. But within that vision, there's different ways of, solving that problem. And so to this community member, I'd say, if you're trying to sell something, it's not working, go back to what we were talking about earlier, like speaking with customers about, how are they currently solving this? Like, what's the problem that they have? And maybe in that you find that, maybe you're not quite on the right problem, or you've got the right problem, but the solution isn't quite there. So I think it's about finding that niche, trying to have as many conversations as possible, learning, because you're not going to be able to solve this, within a room or within a box. You're only going to be able to do it through really listening. And I think that's the key bit about entrepreneurship. And then about whether to continue or not, I think, that's obviously a very personal decision that we all come to. We've run with some ideas that haven't worked and we've moved on from them. And I think that's only really a decision that, you can make. I think the thing is that in entrepreneurship, the way I think that to get success is to work on something that you're really passionate about, because then of course it's a job, but actually it makes it enjoyable and easy to do and fun to do. And so as you're thinking about how you can change and develop your idea, that's great. But also don't move so far that you end up working on something that, you know, you're not passionate about or you don't love doing. Because I've also seen that with businesses, and we've done it ourselves sometimes, and you're probably never going to make it work in the long run because you're going to lose, you know, that passion for it and that hard work. And so, yeah, adapt, iterate, listen to people, but also stay true to what it is that you really want to do and that what really inspires you.
I think that's superb advice. You know, the thing I would say is if you wake up in the morning and suddenly you're just not feeling it anymore, you're exhausted, you actually don't care if anybody else launches that idea, then it might be time to have a really serious conversation with yourself about, you know, is this right for me? And Aaron, you and I have conversations with people who are potentially at that point all the time, don't we? Conversely, if you wake up and you can't imagine anybody else doing this, if you've still got the bit between your teeth, you just know that this is one of those tough periods where you may have to change something. You may, Josh, have to go back to the plan and tweak a few things and talk a bit more. Then, you know, instinctively, probably you're going to feel the drive to keep going. But it's a question we get asked all the time. And I think that was a cracking answer. Thank you. I think we're up on questions. Are we not, Aaron?
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean, we could go all day on this topic, and I think what we've learned today, more than anything, you've already explained about that simplicity of it, and I think that's the key here. All the time, me and Merle are seeing people are coming up with amazing ideas, and they're so passionate, they're so excited, and they're full of energy, and everything's going in the right direction. But when you sit down with them and talk to them about, you know, the nitty gritty parts of it, then that's where sometimes it can fall apart. So keeping it simple, keeping it so that the right tools are on hand. I think this solution here is absolutely perfect, and it's definitely something that we're going to be pushing forward going on. I think, you know, tools like this are the ways where we can actually make sure that businesses are not just going to survive but thrive in things like this.
Totally. Thank you, Aaron. And Josh, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Folks, we do have a few more of your questions. I know that we haven't managed to get to you on the show today. We will make sure that we interrogate Joshua behind the scenes. If you check out the Dear Ferrilio Expert section on Ferrilio's blog site, you will find the answers to all the community questions that we've interrogated all of our guests on. So don't worry if we haven't managed to get to your question today. We will get the answer and we will get it up there so that we're not leaving you in the lurch. Again, please like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. Let us know what else it is that you would like to know. We'll go out and we'll find brilliant guests like Josh to answer your questions. In the meantime, Aaron, I think that's us for another show.
Definitely is. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks, Josh. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thanks a lot. It's been fun. Good luck, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Go far, fast.